can't be true. Ashley loves me.
Scarlet!
I tell him that I love him, and then he can't marry.
Even mentioning the name Gone with the Wind reminds us of the timeless romance, southern charm, and passion of the movie. But behind this 80-year-old epic, there are many untold stories. So get ready as we dive into the backstage of this film. The movie almost didn't happen. On June 30th, 1936, Margaret Mitchell's Gone with the Wind became an instant bestseller. Mitchell, the author, only published this novel during her lifetime, and it got the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction in 1937. Despite its fame today, particularly due to the iconic film it inspired, creating that movie was not initially on the agenda. Producer David O. Selznick had initially rejected the idea of adapting the novel into a film, believing that Civil War stories didn't perform well at the box office. It wasn't until his company's board chairman offered to cover the costs that Selznick acquired the film rights, and, at that point, he hadn't even read the book. Despite Selznick's initial hesitation, he became deeply involved in the film's production. He had a personal collection of images from his career. Today, these rare images from the Selznick archive show the immense effort that went into creating Gone with the Wind. The effort proved worthwhile. Gone with the Wind, the third most expensive film at the time with a budget of $3.85 million, emerged as one of the biggest films of the 20th century.
Can't be true. Ashley loves me.
Scarlet!
Starring Clark Gable and Vivien Leigh and directed by Victor Fleming, it became an enduring classic. When the film premiered on December 15, 1939 in Atlanta, an estimated 300,000 people attended the surrounding festivities over 3 days, and Georgia Governor Urith D. Rivers even declared a state holiday. Gone with the Wind achieved such monumental success that it graced the cover of Time at the end of that year. It drove the producer insane. However, the blockbuster film brought both joy and burden to its authors. Despite the financial success it brought her, Margaret Mitchell grew increasingly upset by the overwhelming attention the film garnered. This led her to become a more private person, often refusing potential biographers and autograph seekers. It also affected the producer. Age might have caught up with David O. Selznick, or perhaps it was the extreme stress he imposed on himself to create the perfect movie. At one point during the filming of Gone with the Wind, the producer started taking Benzedrine. Director George Cukor, who was briefly involved in the film, noticed Selznick descending into chaos. Even with his already intensely controlling personality, when fueled by drugs, Selznick's behavior turned the set into pure insanity. He made the cast wake up at 2 a.m. for shoots, demanded random changes to the costumes, and called his staff at odd hours for minor suggestions. Expressing the toll the movie took on him, Selznick wrote to MGM, stating that it had done so much to him physically, robbing him of his entire personal life for so long. Regardless of the film's eventual success, he questioned whether it was worth the personal sacrifices for himself and his associates. On August 16, 1949, Mitchell passed away, 5 days after being hit by a drunk driver in Atlanta. After her death, most of the original manuscript for Gone with the Wind was burned. However, in recent years, the last 4 chapters resurfaced at the Pequot Library in Southport, Connecticut. Casting of Scarlett O'Hara. One of the most cherished movies in history, Gone with the Wind, catapulted actress Vivien Leigh to stardom. Surprisingly, Leigh, forever associated with her Oscar-winning role of Scarlett O'Hara, wasn't the obvious choice for the headstrong Southern belle. Described in the novel as having an arresting face, pointed chin, and square jaw,
We done, honey.
You haven't been near me all day, and I wore this old dress just because I thought you liked it. I was counting on eating bugs.
Scarlett O'Hara's eyes were pale green, and above them, her thick black brows slanted upward, cutting a startling line in her magnolia white skin. The quest for an actress to portray Scarlett O'Hara in the 1939 film adaptation of Margaret Mitchell's epic novel Gone with the Wind emerged out of necessity. David O. Selznick, before finalizing the deal with MGM for Clark Gable, had to fulfill his contract with United Artists for several films. Consequently, the production of Gone with the Wind was delayed by 2.5 years after Selznick had acquired the rights to the book. Selznick conceived the idea of a global search to find the perfect person for Scarlett O'Hara. This campaign, orchestrated by Selznick's publicity chief,
I tell him that I love him, and then he can't marry.
kept the public engaged during the extended wait before filming began. The public's patience was nearly exhausted, but an unexpected supporter emerged. Margaret Mitchell herself. Mitchell acknowledged Selznick's courage, stubbornness, and determination to keep his mouth shut until he secured the exact cast he wanted, despite all the criticism and jokes. She even made light of the situation by joking about waiting for Shirley Temple to grow up to play Scarlet. Mitchell commended Selznick for holding out for the perfect cast, despite everyone's comments. In the past, Selznick had employed 110 talent scouts to scour little theaters, drama schools, and universities in search of the girl to play Scarlet. Hollywood saw hundreds of potentials flown in for screen tests. There were moments when Selznick regretted initiating the search for Scarlet.
My dear.
I've been looking for you everywhere. I've got something I must tell you.
On one Christmas morning, he was summoned to a train door to receive a delivery. It turned out to be a 7-foot replica of a Gone with the Wind book, tied with a blue ribbon. The ribbon snapped, and a girl in a Confederate gown stepped out claiming that she was his Scarlet OHara. Although Selznick repeatedly expressed his desire to cast an unknown as Scarlet, he was hedging his bets. The dream role of the century naturally attracted most of Hollywood's reigning stars. Selznick didn't discourage their ambitions and tested many of them in expensive color footage, just in case the desired unknown didn't emerge. Lucille Ball, Joan Crawford, Bette Davis, Katharine Hepburn, and Lana Turner were among the prominent names vying for the role. But Selznick rejected them for various reasons. Tallulah Bankhead and Paulette Goddard were frontrunners for a while, but he bypassed them too. Although Paulette Goddard's test was excellent, according to Selznick, she didn't secure the role. Even Carole Lombard, Clark Gable's former co-star and future wife, entered the competition. The battle for the role later inspired the 1980 made-for-TV movie The Scarlet O'Hara War, starring Tony Curtis as Selznick.
2 whole days, and I've got to tell him that I was wrong about something.
She knows you.
Lee was considered a dark horse in the race by fans. As part of the search, potential audience members were surveyed on their choice for Scarlet. There were hundreds of votes, but Lee only received one. Vivien Leigh, the relatively unknown British actress, had appeared in fewer than 10 movies before landing the role of Scarlet O'Hara, a character that many fans couldn't fathom being played by a Brit. So the search for the perfect Scarlet, estimated to have cost Selznick $92,000, stretched over 2 years without success. As time was running out, Selznick had finalized a deal with MGM to borrow Clark Gable, who would become available after the first of the year, but the elusive Scarlet was yet to be found. Facing the urgency of the situation, Selznick made the unconventional decision to start filming without casting Scarlet. The first scene to be shot was the dramatic burning of Atlanta. The studio's back lot, 40 acres, saw groups of old sets set ablaze to capture the fiery spectacle. Atlanta would then be reconstructed for earlier scenes in the script. On the night of December 11th, 1938, the well-prepared production crew eagerly awaited Selznick's signal to commence filming the burning scene. However, Selznick held back, providing no explanation. Director George Cukor questioned the delay, asking why they couldn't start. The truth revealed that Selznick was waiting for his mother and brother Myron to arrive. He wanted them to witness the initiation of this monumental project, even if they arrived 2 hours late. Myron, a top Hollywood agent, brought with him a slender, dark-haired beauty. Against the backdrop of Atlanta's flames illuminating the December sky, Myron Selznick introduced the woman to his brother, saying that she is Scarlet O'Hara. This account is often cited as Vivien Leigh's introduction to Selznick, although its accuracy is questioned. Contrary to the story suggesting that Leigh first encountered Selznick on set during the filming of the Atlanta Depot fire, the exact moment when Selznick decided on casting her as Scarlet remains uncertain. The director, as per rumors, had supposedly signed the British actress as early as February 1938, and the highly publicized quest for Scarlet was deemed by some as a mere stunt. Regardless of its origins, Leigh's casting was officially announced in January 1939 when she was 25 years old. Margaret Mitchell, the author who distanced herself from the filming process, reportedly gave her approval to Leigh. Speculation suggests that Mitchell may have been swayed by the actress's resemblance to Mitchell herself in her early 20s. It's because Mitchell's own life and acquaintances inspired many details in the novel. Leigh's troubles. Despite clinching one of the best roles of her life, Leigh's time during the filming wasn't a walk in the park. Lee faced challenges early on, nearly losing the part after her initial test reading. Being English, she maintained her accent during the informal reading. Accustomed to the clear projection and regal pronunciation of the London stage, Lee's initial reading was described by director Cukor as very sweet and very clipped. In response, Cukor made a blunt remark, resulting in Lee's laughter and the initiation of what he deemed a tender and wonderful friendship. But not everyone was on board with Lee playing Scarlet. The United Daughters of the Confederacy, particularly the Ocala, Florida chapter, strongly opposed the selection of a British actress for the iconic Southern character. Their protests ceased only when they were informed that Katharine Hepburn could be an alternative. During the filming, Lee coped with stress by smoking 4 packets of cigarettes daily. Her constant smoking might have served as a coping mechanism for the long days on set, as Lee worked for 125 days on the movie, significantly more than Gable's 71 days. Despite being relatively unknown in the US, Lee received approximately $25,000 for her role, while Gable, recognized as the King of Hollywood, earned over $120,000. Lee's presence in Gone with the Wind amounted to 2 hours, 23 minutes, and 32 seconds, marking the longest performance to receive an Oscar. Remarkably, she appeared in half of the nearly 4-hour-long movie, the lengthiest film to secure the Best Picture Academy Award. Behind the scenes was another story for Lee and Gable, though. She never forgave Clark Gable for what happened behind set. Lee did not like kissing Gable at all. Her aversion to kissing Gable had nothing to do with her rumored affair with the married British actor Laurence Olivier. Gable's heavy smoking both on and off set and the use of false teeth due to the habit contributed to Lee's discomfort. She later voiced her complaint about the unpleasant smell of Gable's breath. Clark Gable didn't want to be part of the movie. Interestingly, Gable himself was initially reluctant to be part of the film. Despite being a sought-after movie heartthrob, he was rumored to have genuinely bad breath and prided himself on a certain blue-collar machismo. This pride almost led him to refuse a film that might compromise his perceived image. As the only son of a traveling oil field worker, Gable had a challenging upbringing, losing his mother at just 10 months old. After leaving school at 16, he entered the acting world in his early 20s. Endowed with rugged good looks and a distinctive pencil mustache, he became the understudy of celebrated actress Josephine Dillon. She not only served as his acting coach and speech mistress, but also funded his dental surgery. In 1924, Gable married Dillon, who was 17 years older than him, and began landing roles in small silent films. His reputation as a macho heartthrob solidified with the 30s MGM films like Strange Interlude, Red Dust, Hold Your Man, Dancing Lady, Men in White, and Manhattan Melodrama, making him Hollywood's most beloved leading man. Endearing himself to the public, he furthered his popularity by gifting his 1934 Best Actor Oscar for It Happened One Night to a child who admired its prettiness. Capitalizing on his status as a romantic leading man, MGM approached Clark with a new project titled Gone with the Wind, a grand romantic saga set against the backdrop of the American Civil War. Carole Lombard, the future actor of Mr. and Mrs. Smith, was the first person to suggest Gable to play Rhett Butler. Lombard, hopeful for the role of Scarlett O'Hara, reportedly gave Gable a copy of Margaret Mitchell's original novel, which he declined to read. Gable strongly opposed starring in what he deemed a woman's picture. Resistant to portraying a character like Rhett, he eventually succumbed to public pressure and accepted the role. However, he insisted on not portraying the character too romantically and rejected the idea of adopting a fake Southern accent. Despite his reservations, Gone with the Wind became Gable's most renowned film, immortalizing him with the famous line, "Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn." But this line was almost cut from the movie. The iconic line almost never made it in. Interestingly, Selznick faced challenges with the Hays Code to include the word damn in the iconic line. In 1939, the Hollywood Production Code dictated strict guidelines for on-screen content, and Rhett Butler's memorable closing statement posed a significant problem. Rhett's line held paramount importance in the film. It encapsulated Rhett's defeat, the years of suffering from Scarlett and himself, and the gravity and finality of his departure. Selznick tirelessly pleaded for months to secure approval for the word damn under the stringent Hays Code regulations. Several suggested alternatives for Rhett Butler's iconic line included, "I just don't care. It makes my gorge rise. My indifference is boundless. I don't give a hoot. And nothing could interest me less. Despite the persistent legend that the Hayes office fined David O. Selznick $5,000 for using the word damn, the Motion Picture Association Board amended the production code on November 1, 1939, to ensure Selznick's compliance. According to the amendment, the words hell and damn would be prohibited except when their use was essential for the portrayal, in a proper historical context, of any scene or dialogue based on historical fact or folklore. This allowance also applied to quotations from literary works, provided they weren't intrinsically objectionable or offensive. With this amendment, the Production Code Administration raised no further objection to Rhett's closing line. Selznick was adamant that changing the line would make the film a mockery. He mentioned the word's actual dictionary definition, which referred to nothing lewd, but only recorded it as a vulgarism. The movie's iconic line secured the #1 spot on the American Film Institute's list of top movie quotes out of 100. There were a total of 3 quotes from Gone with the Wind. Casablanca was the only film with more quotes on the list. Tears or no tears. Although Gable must have enjoyed delivering that cold, iconic line, there were parts of the movie he didn't want to act out. Gable, concerned about his image, pleaded not to be shown crying on camera.
Anxious to see you. Take
your hands on me, you skunk!
In a crucial scene where Rhett learns of Scarlett's miscarriage, Gable, fearing the emotional display would tarnish his tough guy persona, even threatened to walk off the set. Victor Fleming, renowned for his experience with male leads, filmed 2 versions of the scene. One depicted tears, while the other had the character turned away in profound sorrow.
You can come to my hanging, and I'll remember you in my will.
I'll come to your hanging.
To persuade Gable to choose the weeping version, Fleming argued it would endear him to the audience without portraying weakness. Olivia de Havilland played a pivotal role in convincing Gable, emphasizing that he perceived weeping as unmanly. According to her, societal norms during those times dictated such perceptions, and it was unfortunate that men had to suppress their emotions. Despite various attempts by Fleming, Gable resisted. Even professional arguments failed to sway him.
Don't make any jokes now, I'll kill you!
The crew had filmed the scene without his tears several times, but one last attempt was made. Olivia reassured Gable, expressing confidence in his ability to deliver a poignant performance. Unexpectedly, just before the cameras rolled, tears welled up in Gable's eyes, and he executed the scene remarkably. He poured his entire heart into the performance. Her eye color was wrong. But this wasn't the only issue the studio encountered, although Vivien Leigh assumed the role of Scarlett OHara in Gone with the Wind. A significant issue emerged when producer David O. Selznick noticed that Leigh's hazel eyes did not align with O'Hara's green eyes as described in the novel. Upon reviewing early footage,
with everything I could possibly hope for and not a care in the world,
Selznick said that Leigh's eyes appeared violet, gray, blue, tan, and almost every other color in the spectrum. Since cosmetic lenses were not yet invented during the film's production, Selznick and director Victor Fleming devised a creative solution.
Oh, I'll change the subject and say what I came to say.
Say it then and get out!
The movie's makeup artist applied deep green eyeshadow to Leigh's eyes, while special camera filters were used to minimize the green hue. Fortunately, the efforts paid off, and Leigh's eyes displayed a striking green hue in the final movie. She didn't know how to dance. But while her eyes could be changed in post, her dancing skills couldn't. Despite her accomplishments, dancing was not part of Leigh's skill set. For all dance scenes not requiring close-ups, she relied on a dance double. Additionally, the British actress struggled to produce a convincing retching sound in the "I'll never be hungry again" scene, where she returns to Tara and attempts to eat a radish from the ruined garden. In this instance, Olivia de Havilland, her co-star who portrayed Melanie, stepped in and provided the vomiting sound. Being the least recognized among the 4 lead cast members, Leigh received the last billing on the original poster, positioned below Gable, Leslie Howard, and de Havilland. However, she moved up the billing order, surpassing Howard and de Havilland after winning the Best Actress Oscar. It's time for today's subscriber pick. She never forgave Clark Gable for what happened behind the set. Hattie McDaniel and Clark Gable were great friends on the set of Gone with the Wind, but something happened behind the scenes which appalled McDaniel. Their friendship took a sharp decline for years until the two made up, but McDaniel could never let go of what Gable did. There are rumors that this incident was because Gable and Lee had an affair, but we're not too sure about the specifics. But that's where you, the viewer, come in. Comment down below if you know anything about what exactly happened between Gable and McDaniel. After all, the two are known to have been good friends, so it must have been something really bad. Remember to use the hashtag #subscriberpic to let us know your answers. Now let's move on to another interesting backstage story. A set had to be burned for a scene. For a particular scene in Gone with the Wind, Selznick took an unconventional approach. To depict the burning of Atlanta, a crucial moment in the film, the studio had to resort to setting the set ablaze. Given the absence of CGI in 1939, this practical method was necessary. The set, constructed on a vast studio lot, had false fronts from earlier films to complete the background. Interestingly, part of the set from Selznick's previous movie, King Kong, was also set on fire to capture the intensity of the blaze. This complex technical achievement marked the initial sequence filmed for Gone with the Wind. At this early stage, Selznick hadn't even finalized his choice for Scarlet OHara. Clark Gable and Hattie McDaniel. Gable, renowned as the king of Hollywood and one of the highest-paid actors of his time, boasted a filmography that included 67 movies, with 16 of them reigning atop the box office charts. His repertoire featured classics like Mutiny on the Bounty, It Happened One Night, and the groundbreaking Gone with the Wind, where he assumed a legendary role despite not being a Hollywood icon himself. In 1940, Hattie McDaniel made history by winning an Academy Award for her portrayal of Mammy in Gone with the Wind, becoming the first African-American to achieve this honor. Despite her nomination and triumph, racial segregation marred the ceremony. Held at the whites-only Coconut Grove nightclub in the Ambassador Hotel, McDaniel, along with her Oscar, was relegated to a table against the far wall. Even before the 1940 Academy Awards, McDaniel faced racial restrictions. She was denied attendance at the film's premiere in Atlanta due to the state's Jim Crow laws. Throughout the era of segregation in the United States, Clark Gable, her co-star, remained a supportive friend. Hattie McDaniel's journey into show business followed an unconventional path. Born on June 10, 1895 in Wichita, Kansas, she grew up in Denver, Colorado. From an early age, McDaniel showcased a natural talent for performance. She joined a traveling musical group and made history as one of the first black women to appear on the emerging entertainment medium of radio. However, like much of the country, her career faced challenges with the start of the Great Depression. The economic challenges during that era made securing employment difficult for performers in variety shows and music. Hattie McDaniel, finding herself in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, struggled to make ends meet and worked as a bathroom attendant in a nightclub. Despite the club's policy of hiring only white performers, some patrons discovered McDaniel's talents and convinced the club to let her take the stage. She spent a year there before deciding to move to Los Angeles. Upon arriving in LA, McDaniel secured a position on a radio program titled The Optimistic Do Nuts. Adopting the nickname Hi-Hat Hattie, she swiftly became the show's star. In 1939, McDaniel made her debut on the big screen, and her breakthrough role came in 1934 when she appeared in John Ford's film Judge Priest, featuring a duet with Will Rogers. Clark Gable, learning that Hattie McDaniel was barred from attending the Gone with the Wind premiere, contemplated boycotting the event. McDaniel, however, convinced him otherwise. Their camaraderie on set was evident through playful antics. Gable once pranked McDaniel by adding alcohol to her tea, a prank she only discovered upon tasting it. While Gone with the Wind marked a significant collaboration between Gable and McDaniel, it wasn't their first. In 1935, McDaniel played a maid in China Seas, although she went uncredited in the film. Despite the lack of credit, McDaniel was promoted as one of the most prominent performers of her race as part of the film's publicity. Their friendship blossomed during the filming of this movie. Despite Gable's willingness to object to McDaniel's exclusion from the premiere, Gone with the Wind remains shadowed by controversy. In the nearly 100 years since Gone with the Wind secured McDaniel's place in Hollywood history, the film has faced criticism for its seemingly favorable depiction of life in the South before the Civil War and the absence of hardships among African-American servant characters, including McDaniel's Mammy. This controversy cast a shadow over McDaniel's career, but she often responded to such critiques by expressing a preference for portraying a maid on screen rather than being one in real life. Clark Gable and Lenny Blewett. Lenny Blewett, an 18-year-old extra without screen credit, shared a noteworthy connection with Clark Gable that would leave a lasting impact on both. Blewett, a young African-American resident of Culver City, California, was just embarking on a career as a movie extra when he was hired in 1938 for Gone with the Wind, anticipating its blockbuster release the following year. Blewett was among the hundreds on set for the filming of the burning of Atlanta scene. Upon arriving that morning, Blewett was struck by something he found startling. Dozens of portable toilets had been set up to accommodate the large number of people on set that day. However, what both startled and angered Blewett was the presence of signs above each toilet door. Some read white, while others were labeled colored. Due to the portrayals of black characters in Margaret Mitchell's novel, various black organizations, including the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People and prominent African-American newspapers nationwide, had expressed concerns about the movie adaptation of Gone with the Wind from the outset. However, the primary concern had been the potential portrayal of blacks in a demeaning manner on screen. Despite assurances from producer David O. Selznick about his sensitivity to black concerns, he fell short of fulfilling these promises. Nevertheless, no one had anticipated that segregation would show up during the film's production. Lenny Blewett, who had grown up in Culver City where the movie was being filmed, was accustomed to a thoroughly integrated environment. When he discovered the existence of separate toilet facilities on the movie lot, it marked his first encounter with the humiliation inherent in segregation in public accommodations. Blewett immediately sought out some of the older black actors to organize a protest against what he saw as an outrage. However, the older cast members were apprehensive, fearing they would be replaced if they raised objections, as they had families to support. Blewett recognized that Gone with the Wind couldn't be filmed without black actors, so he persisted. Eventually, he gained the older performers' agreement that he and 2 other young extras could attempt to address the situation. Blewett took a bold step. He went directly to the dressing room of the film's star, Clark Gable, an action uncommon for extras. Being admitted to Gable's dressing room was a big deal itself, and showed Gable's compassion. Blewett explained that he and other black actors faced a significant problem, and requested a few seconds of Gable's time to show him the issue. Blewett then guided Gable to where the toilets were set up and revealed the offensive signs. Gable was outraged. He promptly contacted the movie's director, Victor Fleming, stating that if those signs didn't come down, then the movie wouldn't have a Rhett Butler. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.